All right, well, I'm back working on the sand Muller a little bit today. Today I'm going to try and turn the spindle for the Muller wheel itself and turn the spindle in the nut. And this is the drawing of it. About 7.1 inches long, 1.5 inch stock is what the spindle itself is. And both ends are turned down, 2 inches of material. I'm going to leave the full length. I'm going to go ahead and set it up in just in 3 jaw. We're going to center drill this end for support. Then we're going to turn this down to 1 3/8. This is just a piece of, I believe, hot roll. This was scrap that from my little sheet metal, or from my little metal supplier. Went down, go through their scrap pile. Like I say, I believe this is just some hot roll. They had a pallet sitting out there in the yard that had probably 23-foot sections on it. I think they'd been torch cut on one end, part of them, so they were a drop from something apparently that they'd bought out. So I snagged one of them, cost me 60 cents a pound. So I've got about 7¼ inches cut here, and then I've got a piece of 2-inch round stock, and this is probably cold roll. Well, I know this is cold roll. It was sitting in the drop rack, so it cost me quite a bit more. There was an 8-inch piece there, so I knew I needed for nuts and a couple of little things, so I just snagged it. I don't remember what I paid for it, but it was too much, you know. I mean, for scrap we were paying, I think I was paying 50 cents a pound, and now it's up to, I think, 65. So anyway, I'm just going to lay this out, quick turn and thread. They've got it, they call out 1 3/8 14 thread, and he talks about buying a cheap tap from Harbor Freight. I'm just going to thread it in the lathe, and then we'll bore out this piece of 2-inch stock. This is actually for 2 nuts, 1 nut and then a lock nut on it to go on there. It's bored out and threaded 1 3/8. One of them, I believe they call out, is 7/8 inches long, and the other one's a 1/2 inch long. So I cut, what, 1.5 inch piece. I just got an 1.5 inch piece. I'm going to set it up, bore it, we'll thread the whole thing, and then I'll part off a 1/2 inch piece, and whatever's left we'll use as a nut. So that's kind of what's going on. Bearings are going to be these are LM 485/4/8 and LM 485/10s, and I've got a pair of them here, one set, bearing and race. You know, I've got 2 of these, one for the inside, one for the outside. So 1 3/8, we just want a sliding fit, you know, fairly tight sliding fit for the bearing. And once we get those done, I'll probably go ahead and push the races in the hub, and we'll just test fit it, and then go from there. So let's go over to the lathe and get it set up. All right, I want to check my bearing fit and touch up the end of this tool a little bit. So we'll be right back. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good fit right there. I'll be happy with that. Go ahead and we'll run this final pass down there, and then if we have to touch it up, why we will, but I think it's pretty good right there. Here. All right, well, actual length only needs to be to about here. It looks like I've got about 3/16 quarter inch, about a quarter inch longer than what I need, but we'll face that off after we go ahead and thread it. We'll go ahead and set it up and make sure that we've got enough material. I'd rather have a little extra than not enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and thread this. It's 1 3/8 14, I believe, is what the thread's set out to be. Doesn't matter as long as I match it. But we're all set up. We're just going to go ahead, cut our threads, and see what we come up with. This lathe is getting pretty tired. It's been pretty tired for a while, but the next project, probably the next major project after I get this Muller done, is to go to working on the other shelf and start getting it rebuilt. Anyway, let's cut our threads and see what we come up with here. All right. Okay, that'll work just fine. That next to the last pass, I could feel it starting to dig in. So we'll smooth these up a little bit. I'll run a wire brush across them, and then we'll go ahead and set up the, actually we'll go ahead and cut the nut next, and we'll fit it up. Before we pull this, we'll make sure or break this down, we'll make sure we've got enough thread length and not too much thread length. And then we'll go ahead, shorten this up if we need to, bevel the edge a little bit more, spin it around and turn the other edge into dimension, and then we can go ahead and cut the nut, I guess. Well, how about a little bearing and race here? We've already got the race pushed in the other side, and it was a little bit tight just because it's the side that I had more powder coat on. So this side should be. Let me add a little lube to this real quick. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Of course, it'll all get washed out when we lube it and do final assembly. Now, this is the outside hubcap, so we're going to go together from the inside. And this should sit on here like this. And of course, we've got a little seal that's got to go in this end too, so we've got to turn this diameter to match it. Then our bearing slides on the other side. Goes just like that. And that'll give us room for our nut to go on there. Let me grab a hubcap real quick and see if the hubcap is deep enough or if we have to shorten that thread up a little bit. We've actually got 1 3/4 there. So 1.5 inches, so that will give us enough clearance. We can go ahead and leave that on there just like that. Now that's tight. I'm going to open those up one more size, but that should be fine. 1 3/4 all the way around. About 1 5/8, so we've got 1/8 of an inch. We may shorten that up a little bit. Wouldn't hurt a thing. So while we're there turning. Anyway, that's the way it'll go. Let me, got a seal to go in this side. Let me find that real quick. I think it's probably this seal here. Yeah. Yeah. This 15194 seal will go on this side, I believe. That should be the, yeah, proper dimension for there. We'll turn that down just a little bit just to true it up, clean it up. And when we do final assembly, that will go in right there. Boy, that's kind of a tight. Looks like kind of a tight fit there. Kinda. What's the deal here? Boy, we have to go back and inch and a half. Yeah, I think I probably just screwed up the edge a little bit when I put it in there. That'll go when we're ready. So anyway, that's the progress. I'll go back and see what we can do about the nut for the end, and getting closer. See how close we are to being on center with this. Axle shaft. I think you've already seen me threading these on here. Now you saw me cut a relief in the back side of this. Two reasons for that. One is that little threading tool that I was running would just only make it not quite all the way through. So I added a little relief there just to do away with that, because that's a pretty nice little carbide boring bar for stuff like this, but it was just a little bit too short. So I could have got a little bit closer. The other reason is this shoulder protruded just a little bit when I test fitted it, so I didn't mind a little extra on that bearing, just a little extra clearance if I need it when I preload those. So anyway, I'm happy with that fit on there. That one will thread on there like that. Now these will both get a flat. Both of these two little nuts, and then this is going to be the lock nut on the outside. They'll both get two little flats, so I can put a wrench on there for them. I've got a project on the milling machine right now, so I'm not wanting to break it down until it's completely done. So it'll, when I get it freed up and get the vise back on there, we'll go ahead and mill a couple of flats here. But let's go ahead and do a little trial assembly. You got our bearing on here. We won't worry about putting the seal in until we're ready for final assembly. We lube up this bearing, everything cleaned up and lubed, and then we'll put the seal in the back side. Front bearing is going to go on there just like that. Hopefully we got all the crap out of there, so this will go on. We'll preload that when we do final assembly, and then our little lock nut. We'll go on and lock everything. So there's our spindle. Hubcap will set on the outside, and I still haven't drilled it out for clearance for it to fit. I'll have to build a gasket for it when we get that far. Yeah, we won't drive it on there because it'll be stuck. So, but anyway, there's clearance for that. Now it is stuck. There we go. So anyway, that's ready for gasket, ready to go together. And that will work just fine. Back side. Somebody asked me about the weight of this. I think I weighed it, and it was, I think, 57 pounds is what we ended up with for the weight of the Muller wheel. This is the back side. Our little seal will go on there. Go on in there. Actually, we can, yeah. Anyway, we'll put the seal on when we get that far. This will weld on to our pivot arm. It's about 6 inches long, I believe, 5 3/4, I think what it calls for. 2.5 inches wide, 1 inch thick plate be drilled here, and then the other end mounts into the pivot that's back on the main spindle where the plows attach, and that allows it to pivot up and down. There's a bracket that comes off and has a screw height adjustment in there. So that's the way that goes together. And that'll be the next thing, is to fabricate that part. And then the through spindles, I still got to cast the bushings for the pivot that this pivot's on, and the arm on the main spindle. Stepping over the dog, can't get in front of the camera. So that's progress for the day. Hopefully that's a little bit informative. Comments, suggestions, leave them in the comment section for me below. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button and this interests you, we'll be moving forward on the Muller, as well as our normal other little projects that are going on all the time. Comments, suggestions, as I said, leave them in the comment section for me below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.